Pakistani terror bases, including the headquarters of the Lashkar in Muridke and the headquarters of the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Bahawalpur, were hit. Over 100 terrorists were killed. For the next 4 days, there was a massive flare-up between India and Pakistan, which ended in a ceasefire on the 10th of May. But now, a month on since Pahalgam, on an issue such as national security, on an issue like dealing with terror and terror sponsored by an evil neighbor, unfortunately, politics is taking center stage. The Congress party, the main opposition party, insists that they must know and the nation must know how many aircraft were downed, that why a special session of parliament is not being convened, why the role of America, if at all there was one, as is being claimed by the US President Mr. Trump, why is that not being clarified by the government? The Prime Minister today was in Bikaner. He was at the Null Air Base and then subsequently went for a function in Bikaner. Null was one of the places that Pakistan said it had targeted. Clearly no visible damage at the airbase. And from the soil of Bikaner today, the Prime Minister gave out a befitting reply. He said, Pakistan has been taught a lesson, terror targets have been hit, Sindoor ko barood bana diya, meaning the Sindoor that was taken away from the wives, daughters and mothers who lost their loved ones in Pahalgam on the 22nd of April, that Sindoor has now been converted into an explosive that landed in Pakistan. The question is, has the Prime Minister done enough to silence the opposition?
हमारी सरकार ने तीनों सेनाओं को खुली छूट दे दी थी और तीनों सेनाओं ने मिलकर ऐसा चक्रव्यूह रचा कि पाकिस्तान को घुटने टेकने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया। 22 तारीख के हमले के जवाब में हमने 22 मिनट में आतंकियों के 9 सबसे बड़े ठिकाने तबाह कर दिए। दुनिया ने और देश के दुश्मनों ने भी देख लिया कि जब सिंदूर बारूद बन जाता है तो नतीजा क्या होता है।
All right, minutes after the Prime Minister's speech in Bikaner, Congress MP and their chief spokesperson, Mr. Jairam Ramesh, was quick to attack. It was followed up by Leader of the Opposition, Rahul Gandhi, just a short while ago, tweeting about it. The Congress has 3-4 questions that they want to ask the Prime Minister. They say that he must stop with what they call hollow dialogues and answer these 4 questions. First one being, why are the brutal killers of Pahalgam still free? Second, the Congress MP is also concerned as to why the Prime Minister has not chaired an all-party meeting in the aftermath of the Pahalgam attack or even in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor and taken the opposition parties into confidence. The government, of course, has taken the opposition into confidence multiple times. There have been multiple all-party meetings, of course, chaired by Rajnath Singh, the Defence Minister, and by Home Minister Amit Shah. Thirdly, the Congress's question to the Prime Minister is, why has he not called for a special session of Parliament yet? That has been a demand of the Congress and other opposition parties. But some of its own allies, India Alliance, Sharad Pawar, for example, of the NCP-SP, he is not supporting this demand of a special parliament session. Both the TMC and the Samajwadi Party too have been rather muted in this demand. And the final question that the Congress wants clarification from the Prime Minister is that the claims made by US President Donald Trump about mediating, about brokering the ceasefire between India and Pakistan, why is the government not coming clean on it? The fact is that the government has clarified. Time and time again it is clarified, saying that there was no question of any third-party mediation, including mediation by the United States, that it was arrived at bilaterally between India and Pakistan. In fact, some members in the Congress party don't even see merit in the Congress party taking up this issue over and over again. But let's put out what the Congress's chief spokesperson said, and then we'll open this up to our political face-off.
आतंकवादी हैं जिन्होंने पहलगाम में आतंकी हमला करवाया था, क्रूर आतंकी हमला करवाया था, पर ये लोग भटक रहे हैं कश्मीर में, जम्मू में। प्राथमिकता सांसदों को भेजने की नहीं होनी चाहिए, प्राथमिकता होनी चाहिए जो आतंकवाद के लिए जिम्मेदार हैं, संसद के अंदर हमें उठाना चाहिए। पर संसद तो बुलाया नहीं जाता। सर्वदलीय बैठक में ऐसे सवाल हम करेंगे, प्रधानमंत्री तो होते नहीं, प्रधानमंत्री तो जवाब नहीं देंगे।
All right, let's quickly open this up to a political face-off. Charu Pragya, spokesperson of the BJP, Colonel retired Rohit Chaudhary, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Charu Pragya, the four questions that Jairam Ramesh and the Congress Party are asking the Prime Minister and the BJP. Number one, why are the killers of Pahalgam still free? Why has the Prime Minister not chaired an all-party meeting? Why has the Prime Minister not called for a special session of Parliament? And why is the Prime Minister silent on Mr. Trump's claims about US mediation?
Daga, good evening to you. I think it is becoming downright disgraceful that the chief opposition party in India today has still not understood that Operation Sindoor is not over. They have still not understood that they live in Bharat, they live in India, and they should not be echoing questions, sentiments, and statements made by Pakistan time and time again. They also need to remember that when one thing has been clarified by the government or someone from our armed forces, in this particular case by our DGMO himself, when he clearly said that this was a bilateral decision which was made after DGMO Pakistan called up India, they still go on and they peddle their suspicion. My point here is, when a war-like situation has arisen, when a situation is so distraught every single day that every single Indian is praying for our soldiers, why is Pakistan's narrative being echoed by Congress? Why is it that Rahul Gandhi trains his guns on New Delhi, not on Islamabad? Why is it that today he wants to raise questions which have been answered 1,000 times over and 1,000 times more strongly than Congress government has ever done so? Let me remind Rahul Gandhi today, in 2019, he was the one who said Masoor Azhar Ji. Do you remember that statement in 2019, Zaka? I cannot but forget the way he gave respect to a terrorist. Even today, instead of asking questions of Pakistan, instead of praising the Indian Army, instead of standing with government of India, he echoes every sentiment made by Pakistan.
So let me ask Colonel Chaudhary of the Congress Party. Here are 5 things that the Prime Minister said in his speech in Bikaner. Number 1, the valor of our soldiers brought Pakistan down to its knees. We destroyed 9 terror sites in Pakistan in just 22 minutes. We displayed the power of the Sindoor when it becomes a barood or an explosive. Those who bled India are paying the price for every single drop of blood that's been shed. Number 5, Pakistan's excuse of non-state actors and state actors will not work anymore. And number 6, India will not get scared by Pakistan's nuclear blackmail. On every one of these counts, Operation Sindoor was a huge success. So why is the Congress Party or the leader of the opposition trying to poke holes in it?
Look, it is very simple to say that our defense forces, they have performed exceedingly well. Their precision was absolutely bang on targets, and they have destroyed all the 9 given targets, whereas their capability was to destroy all the 150 terror launch pads and staging area and all the targets. Thereafter, they could take on the counter-offensive of Pakistan, and they destroyed 11 airfields. Look, in the entire narrative, military has performed exceedingly well and they have passed 100%, whereas the political narrative has failed miserably. Look, first of all, how are you believing Pakistan and trusting Pakistan? The day ceasefire was enforced, on that evening, that night, 5 o'clock was the cutoff time of ceasefire. That night, Pakistan again sent their missiles and their drones and everything. So it means the intent of Pakistan was to basically create further nuisance in India. So it means we are trusting a partner. We cannot trust Pakistan. It's a rogue country. Now the question is the political narrative has failed. The way US President has enforced this ceasefire, the way our external affairs minister has come out and said very clearly, openly, that at the start of the operations,
no, sir, that has been time and time again clarified. Both those positions have been time and time again clarified. Colonel Saab, you're an ex-Fauji. You know this. I mean, nobody informs the enemy at the start of an operation. But there is a military to military, DGMO to DGMO, military log that is kept, whereby you have to inform the other person of whatever action you've taken. And that's what the External Affairs Minister said.
I think the military doctrine is very simple and clear. Surprise, secrecy, shock action.
Yes. So what he meant was, after Operation Sindoor, after 1:30 a.m. on the 7th, the military to military log, the communication was conveyed to the other side that, look, these are the 9 sites that we hit.
This is not the protocol that we are supposed to do it. It is a military action that we are supposed to destroy all their targets. This
Sir,
is
may I ask something?
it doesn't happen.
So Charu
DGMOs
Pragya has a question.
don't-
Charu Pragya has a question for you.
when we are in
Colonel
war,
Saab,
we are to decimate them.
Most
We were
respectfully,
ready.
and you're a veteran from my army, most respectfully, may I ask you this? 26/11 happened in the city of Mumbai, our city, the financial capital of our country. I'm sure you might have been serving at that point of time. Can you tell me what military action was taken by my country then? Can you tell me what was done to avenge the lives of innocent citizens that were lost? Subsequently after that, since Modi government has come to power, every single time Pakistan has dared to raise its eyes towards my country, we have retaliated and we have hit them hard, and we are mighty proud of it. From you, I expected better, sir.
No, so
Most importantly,
I'll actually answer what Dr. Manmohan is saying. So, Colonel Saab, 1 second. Just give me 10 seconds. I will give you the quote, the exact quote of what Dr. Manmohan Singh said in the aftermath of 26/11 attacks. He said, and I quote, we will go after the perpetrators of the crime, but we will do so in a manner that is prudent and effective. On record, the former IAF chief, the Air Chief Marshal Fali Homi Major, on record has said, and it's been written in multiple books as well, that the Air Force said we have the capability of crossing the line of control and hitting these terror launch pads on the other side of the LC. The political leadership at that time said no. Colonel Saab.
So, first of all, 26/11, I would like to remind you that the difference between 26/11 and today, after 22nd April, Congress Working Committee was convened, and it was unequivocally we gave a support to our government, our defense forces, that in this point in time, the entire country is together, 146 crore people are together, Congress party, all opposition, everybody is together.
No, sir.
And
Again, respectfully, your leaders were mocking our Rafales with Nimbu and Mirchi.
Charu, 1 second. One at a time. Please let him finish.
Please wait. So we gave the entire mandate through our entire weight against the along with the government, and we said that whatever punitive, strong, decisive action has to be taken against these perpetrators of this terrorist attack, they have to be given.
But Colonel Saab, you don't think after hitting 9 terror bases, no, one second, you don't think after hitting 9 terror bases and damaging 11 air bases, India has raised the strategic deterrence cost on Pakistan? You don't think so?
Absolutely no. We have done our job. Political narrative has entirely failed. Our entire country was in upbeat mood on 10th of morning when this briefing was done, and suddenly, when the ceasefire was brought on us and it was thrust on us, we were not happy. We were feeling that as if we have been cheated.
So, Charu Pragya, there is a feeling of being cheated, not just by the opposition, but by the BJP's own supporters who are saying, why did we suddenly, as we were climbing the escalation ladder, why did we stop? Did we do it? Did we do it under American pressure?
Right. So first, if I may clarify to the Congress spokesperson that in spite of whatever was said after the all-party meeting, it was followed up by abhorrent actions. Ajay Rai actually held up a toy plane with a Nimbu Mirchi mocking our Rafales. After that, that Sat Dan Se Juda post was made. And all of this was carried by... Sir, allow me to speak. I do not want to be rude to you. Allow me to speak. All of this was carried by Pakistani media. Congress has become stars in Pakistani media. Is that your end goal, sir? Is that what you are applauding? Is that what Rahul Gandhi wants?
External Minister has also become a mockery in
dossiers, in glowing terms. Is that what makes you feel like you've made some kind of an achievement? But coming back to Operation Sindoor, when the whole world is praising...
I've served my nation for 30 years.
Sir, I am not making any personal attacks on you, but you are speaking for the Congress party. You are speaking for the Congress party, and you are in a face-off with me, which allows me to speak against your party. You are right now here as a spokesperson, not as an ex-army officer. Please. Remember that. I'm not speaking against you in a personal way. Most importantly here...
26/11, I have to
okay, let her finish. 30 seconds. Let her finish, sir, please. One at a time. Let her finish. 30 seconds. I'll come back to you on that 26/11 question. Yeah, Charu, you
Zaka,
finished,
when our Air Marshal was speaking, he specified the time at which DGMO Pakistan made a call to India, which was 3:30, right? Everything that Trump has said, consequently or not said, it is not of any relevance to us. Who are we supposed to believe in a crisis? Our own army, our own government, or are we supposed to believe a foreigner. Please tell me,
Okay.
why is it that Congress echoes Pakistan? And sir, please, you need to stop applauding people
Okay.
who come in Pakistan's
Now, Colonel Saab,
dossiers.
you're saying 2611
Yeah.
was different, and whatever reason,
issues.
you tell us what reason did Congress Party at that time not take action? You had the same choice that was faced with Mr. Modi's government. Why didn't you take
Right.
action?
There are 2.2 questions. One is DGMO, what she has raised just now, and the second one was 2611. 2611, when this operation was on, thick of the operations, current Prime Minister, he was Chief Minister at that point in time. He was doing a press conference outside Taj Hotel when the operations were on, and he said that we will do, I don't know what not we will do, and we will do this, that, that. And we have killed, out of 10, we have killed 9. We have killed 9
So where was the
terrorists.
political will
And
to
the last
retaliate?
one,
The
10th
political
one,
will was to write
the
letters.
sound was, no, political
political will
was
was to
absolutely
write
missing.
letters. I
BJP
was a law
was missing
student at
from the
that
scene.
time.
BJP was just not making noises, but they
Political
were
will
not
was to
supporting the
write
government.
letters.
And
Okay.
Anti-terror
politically
squads were also
and
made after that. My
internationally,
father is
we
not
All right.
made a
The
success.
second part.
Please
The
not tell
second
me
part
we
that
did
she.
that operation.
The second part that she
We
asked.
lived
Yes.
through it.
The second part. Quickly, Colonel Saab. I
Second
have to
part
wrap
is,
up. Yeah.
yeah. Second part is that DGMOs have got a limited mandate. On the line of control, whenever there is a small little, border offenses or ceasefire violations all along, DGMOs take call and they do flag meetings and all. When you have opened up the IB from Skardu to Poonch, Rajouri, Pathankot, and then coming up to Bhuj and Nalia in the Gujarat. So it means it is an international border. It is a government decision. DGMOs do not take decisions. They can only
No, but the
they can
call
only
came from the
inform.
Pakistani
Complete
DGMO at
operational freedom
3:30
was
p.m.
given to the
on the
army.
10th of May and said, we will stop the firing, to which the Indian DGMO said yes.
So their DGMO had given a call on 22nd April also. They had given a call all along. Then why Operation Sindoor was launched? From 22nd April to 7th of May, they have given 10 different calls. They are on hotline. So why did you do this strike? So please do not make this wrong comments. It is not the
I'm making
ambit of
right
DGMO.
comments, fact-based
DGMO was
comments,
made
sir.
a feast.
All right,
Government was
Charu,
firing
final
from the
word. I have to
shoulders-
wrap up
government
after this
was
30
firing
seconds.
from the
I got to go
shoulders
to
of
the
DG.
next
Yes.
segment. Yes, please.
Quickly and
From the
closing,
shoulders
sir,
of
I would
DG.
like to remind
That
you
is
that
why
our
let
Prime
Charu
I'm
close.
Minister,
saying
Let
that it
Charu
is
close, please.
government's
30 seconds. I
decision.
got
It
to
is
wrap up,
not
sir. Yeah.
DGMO's decision. Government has
our Prime Minister very categorically said that our armed forces have been given complete operational freedom. Did that ever happen when your party was in power? It did not. At the same time,
1971
if we
war,
want to travel back in history, you
we
needed
created
to have
two
political
pieces.
will to hit back
Sir,
at
we don't have
Pakistan.
time to
You
go
never
back to
did.
71.
You never did.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
No,
Charu Pragya.
it is our
Colonel, thank you very much for speaking with us, Colonel Chaudhary. Thank you to Charu Pragya and to Colonel Chaudhary. Like I said, this is an issue that there needs to be a bipartisan consensus in this country. Unfortunately, once the military action is over, the political action heats up. Meanwhile, talking about this political action, the US President Donald Trump, he's again and again, including just yesterday, he's taking credit for brokering a ceasefire deal between India and Pakistan after Operation Sindoor. Trump declared at a press meeting, in fact, at the Oval Office while he was welcoming the South African president, and he said that it was the United States that mediated and settled this whole thing. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has rejected Trump's claims. He spoke to a Dutch broadcaster, NOS. Dr. Jaishankar has said that there was no third-party involvement. The ceasefire was arrived at bilaterally between India and Pakistan. Trump claimed that it was America that settled the India-Pakistan ceasefire deal by throwing in the threat of trade. He said, guys, let's do some trade and let's stop this fighting. Those are his exact words. But the External Affairs Minister has hit back and clarified, saying that India made it clear to everybody, including to the United States, that if Pakistan wanted to stop the fighting, then the message had to come from Pakistan, not from the United States. So their general has to call up India's general and say that they want to stop the firing. And that is what happened at 3:35 on the 10th of May. It was the Pakistani DGMO who called the Indian DGMO and said that they're stopping the firing. Trump went on to repeat that it was the United States that spoke to both countries and brokered this deal. The External Affairs Minister shut down that claim contending that this is something between India and Pakistan and that no third party, even if the Americans want to intervene, they don't have a locus standi there. Trump also contended that the US did something good by brokering the deal between India and Pakistan. Dr. Jaishankar countering that Trump version by contending that India and Pakistan will deal with the issue bilaterally and do not require any third-party intervention.
If you take a look at what we just did with Pakistan and India, we settled that whole thing, and I think I settled it through trade. We're doing a big deal with India, we're doing a big deal with Pakistan, and I said, what are you guys doing? You know, somebody had to be the last one to shoot, and we spoke to them, and I think I hate to say we got it settled, and then 2 days later, something happens, and they say it's Trump's fault.
So on the 10th of May, it was the Pakistani army which sent a message that they were ready to stop firing, and we responded accordingly.
And where was the US in this process?
Well, the US was in the United States. I mean, obviously there were US Secretary of State Rubio and Vice President Vance had called up. Rubio had spoken to me, Vance had spoken to our Prime Minister. You know, they had their view, and they were talking to us, and they were talking to Pakistanis, as indeed were some other countries. Yep. I mean, the United States was not alone. But the ceasefire, the cessation of firing and military action was something which was negotiated directly between India and Pakistan. We made one thing very clear to everybody who spoke to us, not just United States, but to everybody, saying, look, if the Pakistanis want to stop firing, they need to tell us. We need to hear it from them. Their general has to call up our general and say this.
Now, for the first time since the Pahalgam attack, the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, also hinted at a direct link between the attack that happened on the 22nd of April in Pahalgam and what the Pakistan Army Chief, General Munir, had said just a week or so before that at the Overseas Pakistanis Conference, where he called Kashmir the jugular vein, and he sort of justified the two-nation theory and said Hindus and Muslims can never live together. Dr. Jaishankar slammed the Pakistani Army Chief, General Munir, for what he called his religious outlook. He also said that in the Pahalgam attack, there was a fresh element of religion that was introduced, aiming expressly to create communal disharmony between Hindus and Muslims. This comment gains even more importance because Asim Munir has just been promoted in the last couple of days to the rank of Field Marshal, which means he cannot be court-martialed, he gets sanctioned from prosecution, there is no accountability and complete protection for the rest of his life, even after he retires. Let's listen into what Dr. Jaishankar said.
It started because it was triggered by a very barbaric terrorist attack in the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, where 26 tourists were murdered in front of their families after ascertaining their faith. And it was done in a way in which it was intended to harm tourism, which is the mainstay of the Kashmir economy, and to create a religious discord. You have a Pakistani leadership, especially their army chief, who's very driven by extreme religious outlook. So there is clearly some connect between, the views that were expressed and the behavior that was done.
So today marks exactly 30 days since the Pahalgam terror attack, and India continues to be strong in its response both militarily and diplomatically. But life has changed for those on the ground, both in Jammu as well as in Kashmir. There's a massive shift in the public sentiment which has been witnessed in Kashmir. In fact, for the first time after a terror attack such as this, ordinary Kashmiris came out and expressed not just their displeasure, but their condemnation and absolute anger and frustration at these terror groups. Take a look at this special report from my colleague Ishan Wani, who went back to Pahalgam exactly a month after that dastardly terror attack.
For the first time in decades, a significant number of Kashmiris have publicly sided with the nation in condemning terrorism. Public sentiment in the valley has been marked by a mix of grief, fear and frustration, coupled with a shift towards unity against terror. People took to the streets from all walks of life condemning the Pahalgam attack. Kashmiris across the board express unanimous condemnation of the attack, with many locals, including hoteliers and residents, describing it as a tragedy unprecedented in its scale.
इस किलिंग से जो है पूरी कौम शर्मसार है, पूरी कश्मीरियत शर्मसार है और पूरी कश्मीरी आवाम जो है शर्मसार है। और ये अटैक जो है ये टूरिस्ट्स पे नहीं है, ये कश्मीरियों पे है, ये कश्मीरियत पे है, ये इंसानियत पे है और हम जो है इसकी पुरजोर मजम्मत करते हैं।
The attack was a reminder of the growing frustration of Pakistan against peace established in the valley after almost 4 decades. For the first time in years, Kashmiris were witnessing nightlife and cinema. The attack severely impacted Kashmir's tourism, a critical economic driver.
पूरा ही काम डाउन हो गया, काम तो है नहीं, आप नज़र दौड़ा सकते हैं मार्केट की, कहीं कस्टमर दिख नहीं रहा है. It is round about 100% downfall is there because we don't have tourists. Our main business was with the tourists and they are not coming.
The Pahalgam attack prompted a robust response from the security forces, with increased coordination between police and the army, alongside a shift in counter-terror strategies. 6 terrorists have been killed so far in 2 operations since the Pahalgam attack. While the hunt for the Pahalgam attackers is on, the local support against terror has reflected a collaborative effort between security agencies and locals to root out terrorism.
यहाँ की पब्लिक है, मैं उनका भी धन्यवाद करना चाहूँगा. हम सभी सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस की तरफ से मैं उनका धन्यवाद करना चाहूँगा कि उनके सहयोग के बगैर इस तरीके की सफलता और आतंकवाद का सफाया करना मुश्किल ही नहीं, नामुमकिन है. और इस सफलता इस बात का भी ये प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण है कि पब्लिक खुद चाहती है कि इस आतंकवाद का, इस दहशतगर्दी का जम्मू एंड कश्मीर से सफाया पूरी तरह से हो सके.
Despite the trauma and economic fallout, Kashmiris are showing remarkable resilience to rebuild trust and revive the valley's image as a safe destination.
Kashmiri log is very helpful, very truthful and very supportive of this, and we are safe here. No worries for tourism. Tourists can come from many parts of the world.
बहुत अच्छा माहौल है और कोई डर नहीं है.
The government is trying to ensure they send a message that Kashmir is peaceful and this attack would not hamper Kashmiris from standing against terrorism and welcoming those who want to come to Kashmir. With Bashir Lone in Srinagar, Shanwani for CNN News 18.
All right, so Donald Trump continues to insist, including yesterday, that it was he and the United States that intervened between India and Pakistan. What is worse is that he's now equated India and Pakistan every single time he has tried to claim credit. It has led to a lot of anger, frustration, resentment even against America, a long-standing, trusted strategic partner of India's. The question that's being asked in strategic circles right now is, can India trust America to be a fruitful, trustworthy, long-term partner? In every India-Pakistan crisis of the 21st century, whether it's the 1999 Kargil War, the 2001 Parliament attack, the 2008 26/11 Mumbai siege, the 2019 Balakot airstrike, or even now in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor, the United States has played a role, sometimes overt, sometimes behind the curtains. Washington walks a diplomatic tightrope in South Asia. On the one side, a long-standing security partnership with Pakistan shaped by decades of Cold War and post-9/11 terror landscape when Pakistan became a major frontline non-NATO ally of the United States. On the other, over the last 20-25 years, a rapidly deepening strategic partnership with India driven by a shared concern over a rising China and also maintaining a liberal international order. But as recent events in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor show, this balancing act by America is growing harder to sustain.
My administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of 2 nations with lots of nuclear weapons.
The Trump administration and its eagerness to take credit for the de-escalation in Operation Sindoor's aftermath may have been theatrics, may have been Trump being a politician trying to gain political credit, But it was not entirely without cold political logic. Multiple credible reports suggest that high-level communications, both formal and back-channel, did occur between Washington and New Delhi, of course between Washington and Islamabad as well, in the 4 days that happened between the 7th of May when Operation Sindoor was carried out and the 10th of May when a ceasefire was eventually called. There are on-record conversations that have happened between Vice President J.D. Vance and Prime Minister Modi, as well as multiple conversations between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Indian and Pakistani counterparts. The Americans may not have brokered peace, but they were certainly pressing for peace. The call that sealed the deal happened between Rubio and Munir on the 10th morning. This duality, and some would say a double standard that America exhibits, is not new. In public, Washington champions bilateralism between India and Pakistan. For the public consumption, it says that India and Pakistan must resolve their differences directly. But in private and behind the scenes, Washington often plays the emergency operator, it patches calls, nudges pauses, and leans just enough on both sides to manage the escalation. That's what happened in 1999. It was President Bill Clinton back then who pressed Nawaz Sharif, who had gone to the White House with an SOS call to end the Kargil war. 25 years later, Trump's lieutenants were in on the act, whether it was J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio. For India, this selective invisibility has always been a problem. There is a pattern here which Washington has followed over the last 25 years. It's a pattern that India watches very closely and is extremely wary of. During the height of the current crisis, several US officials, including the Secretary of State, issued measured statements saying it's up to India and Pakistan to figure out a solution. In fact, J.D. Vance, in an interview to Fox News, had said it was none of America's business. They condemned the terrorism by Pakistan, but at the same time called for restraint by both sides. Now, while technically they're being even-handed, the implication was that India's calibrated strike against terror deserved to be seen in the same light and in parity with Pakistan's use of terror proxies. So in one stroke, essentially what America was doing was equating both the victim and the perpetrator of terror. At the same time that America was working to de-escalate the military tension between India and Pakistan, it was also ratcheting up pressure on India on unrelated fronts, particularly on the trade front, where Trump and his administration officials have been locked in multi-week negotiations with Indian officials, as they have indeed had negotiations with other partners as well. Long-standing differences on the trade domain, whether it's on digital taxes, agricultural market access, the duties on agricultural products, pharmaceuticals, these were suddenly back in the focus as part of the Trump tariff negotiations. Behind closed doors, there have been conversations about how Washington perhaps was using this crisis between India and Pakistan as some form of leverage to extract commercial concessions. Now, many would see that this is an opportunistic tactic, it's a tone-deaf tactic, and most importantly, it was creating parity between the victim and the perpetrator. The contradiction in this strategy by the United States is stark. India was being urged to exercise restraint in the border against a state that sponsors terrorism. At the same time, India was also being pushed on other issues by the very same country that is asking India to show restraint. For Delhi, mediation on Kashmir is a hot red line. It's not just a symbolic question, it's a strategic question. Accepting any form of third-party involvement, particularly from a superpower who has its own agenda, risks legitimizing Pakistan's long-standing demand to internationalize the Kashmir issue. That is why successive Indian governments across party lines, whether ruled by the BJP or by the Congress, have firmly rejected any idea of foreign mediation. This has been the Government of India's stated position since the Shimla Agreement of 1972. And there have been wars thereafter, but none where there's been open mediation by any superpower. And yet, Donald Trump continues to persist. America doesn't call it mediation, they call it crisis management, they call it de-escalation, they call it engaging with both parties at the same time. But the effect is the same, particularly when the announcement came like what Trump did, preempting what should have been a formal announcement by the government of India and then by the government of Pakistan. Trump took to Truth Social, in a way preempting the claim of a ceasefire, which distorts the ground reality and it misrepresents India's position on how the cessation of hostilities was brought about. Also, in private conversations, Indian diplomats have expressed frustration that every military action against terror is quickly folded into a broader India-Pakistan framework. That reduces it from a counter-terror operation to making it a bilateral issue. This framing serves America's interests, but it doesn't serve India's interests. To understand what the American security calculus is, one must look beyond New Delhi and beyond Islamabad. You should firmly gaze at what is happening in Beijing, in Kabul, and in Moscow. First, America's strategic priority in South Asia has always been in containing Chinese assertiveness, whether it is militarily, technologically, and economically. India is central to that effort. America needs a strong, stable, and capable India which can hold its own in the Indo-Pacific against a hegemonic China. That is in America's interest. But an India that is distracted and embroiled in a subcontinental conflict with Pakistan, that is not necessarily in America's interest. Second is Afghanistan. Despite the fact that US troops have withdrawn a few years ago, the United States still has counterterrorism interests in Afghanistan, particularly because China has been making deep inroads into Afghanistan in a way to expand its Belt and Road initiative. So to that extent, Pakistan still matters because Pakistan still is a supply hub for drone logistics, back-channel influence over the Taliban, and also, most importantly, for counterintelligence sharing. Washington cannot afford a full rupture with the generals in Rawalpindi. And third, and perhaps one important part of this equation, is global energy flows. Any India-Pakistan conflict risks regional destabilization, which can have an immediate rattling effect on oil markets. Oil prices could go soaring up. Now, the United States wants to calm down oil prices, not least because it will have a knock-on effect on the American consumer, but also in the regional dynamics. India has been depending for the last 3 years on cheap Russian oil since the Ukraine war began. Any war in the subcontinent would only further drive up India's dependence even more on cheap Russian oil. So in that context, American diplomacy is not about backing India as a strategic partner, it is simply about managing equilibrium between India and Pakistan. America's role in South Asia is not necessarily that of an honest broker. It is a superpower that is looking out and managing its own interests. And that is fine. That's what countries do. That's what they do in their own national interest, so long as India sees what America is doing in the subcontinent for what it's worth. So it's exactly a month since the Pahalgam terror attack. India, of course, carrying out Operation Sindoor earlier this month and drawing some new red lines that terror will not go unpunished. There will be a proportionate cost that will be imposed on the enemy. And of course, there are a range of options that are sub-nuclear, some of which India carried out through the course of Operation Sindoor. Are we looking at a new normal? That's what the government of India, that's what the Prime Minister today said in his address in Bikaner. But what are the red lines? What is the template of this new normal? And how will India enforce this new normal were there to be another attack some months or years down the line? Professor John Mearsheimer is with the Political Science Department at the University of Chicago, one of the world's foremost international relations experts. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. You're joining us on the day exactly a month since the attack that happened on the 22nd of April, in which 26 Indians were killed. India, of course, took reprisal action through the military operation that was carried out earlier this month. What is your assessment now, a month in, as to whether India has created a new paradigm or a new security doctrine when it comes to dealing with these acts of terror by the actions it took earlier this month?
That India has created a new paradigm or a new model for dealing with this problem. This is a long-standing problem, and India is, I think, responding today much the way it has responded in the past and is likely to respond in the future. I don't think India wants a major war with Pakistan, and therefore it engages in escalation on the lower rungs of the escalation ladder. And the problem that India faces is that it can't dominate on the lower rungs or even the middle range rungs of the escalation ladder. Furthermore, the United States got deeply involved in this, or at least it claims that it got deeply involved in this, which is not to India's advantage, because India doesn't want it to be a situation where the United States comes in and tells India what to do. But it looks to some people like that's what has happened. And furthermore, from India's point of view, it doesn't want to be treated as an equal with Pakistan. India views itself, understandably, as a greater power than Pakistan. But in a conflict like this, India and Pakistan end up getting treated equally. So I think from a military point of view, it's a standoff.
I do want to talk about the U.S. role because there's been a lot of disappointment with the intervention of leaders like Mr. Vance, the Vice President, the Secretary of State. But the disappointment, I suspect, is greatest with President Trump, not least because of his public pronouncements, including one yesterday when he was meeting the South African president, I think, in the White House, where he said, "Look, I told these two countries, let's do some trade." There are two parts to this problem. One is, as you said, equating India and Pakistan, in a sort of even keel. Clearly, India doesn't think it needs to be equated or hyphenated with Pakistan. And second, the whole thing started because of a terrorist attack. India's response was in response to that terrorist attack. For the President of the United States to say, "I said, let's do some trade," equating trade to response to a terror attack has also left real sour taste in the mouth. How would you see both of these aspects?
I completely understand the Indian perspective, but it's what you would expect from President Trump. Diplomacy is not his strong suit. He just says whatever he thinks. He doesn't think carefully about the diplomatic consequences of his rhetoric. And even more importantly, he likes to claim responsibility for every success in international politics. So he's come into this situation and he's basically treating India and Pakistan if they're minor players who were squabbling, and he, the great Donald Trump, came in and put both of them at rest by telling them that he would give them more trade if they stopped fighting with each other. This, of course, is not what happened, but it's the way President Trump views the world. He always sees himself as being responsible for good outcomes. And the end of the conflict here was a good outcome. It didn't escalate further. So he's claiming credit. And I can understand why the Indians are deeply unhappy about this. And the Pakistanis, on the other hand, are happy about Trump's rhetoric.
How much of that rushing in to claim credit for this ceasefire, as he claims he mediated, which India, of course, is completely denying, is because of his apparent failures in finding any kind of peace, either in Russia, Ukraine, or for that matter in the war that's going on between Israel and Hamas in Gaza?
I agree 100% with what you said. I think that if you look at Trump's performance on the foreign policy front, with regard to settling the war in Ukraine, improving relations with Russia, coming up with some sort of meaningful peace agreement with Iran to shut down that crisis, and ending the Gaza genocide, he's failed on every count. And then you can put on top of that the problem with tariffs. It's quite clear that he's had to backtrack on tariffs. It's quite clear that tariffs are going to have a negative effect on the American economy. So he is, I believe, in political trouble. And I believe the situation only gets worse with the passage of time. So in a situation like that, you would expect Trump to come in and claim all the credit for shutting down the conflict between India and Pakistan, even though that's not true.
So just expanding this, on the one side, on the Pakistan side, you clearly have this alignment going on between China and Pakistan. Much of the weaponry that Pakistan used and currently uses happens to be Chinese. So it's clear there is a degree of strategic alignment happening there. India, of course, had put its eggs in the American basket, as it were, but given Trump's comments and the degree of great, I wouldn't say anger, but certainly frustration that is shown up here in India, where does that leave India? Because India was counting on America's support to take India's side in the event of a clash, a flare-up either with Pakistan or with China. On that side, there clearly seems to be a strategic alignment. Here, I'm not so sure anymore.
Well, I think that there's no question that on the Pakistani side, relations between China and Pakistan are quite good. It's obvious that the Chinese are providing the Pakistani with excellent weaponry and are likely to provide them with even better weaponry moving forward. And then if you look at the India-US side, I think there's no question that India is dealing with the United States that is not the most reliable partner. India is not the only country in the world that is having trouble with the United States, as you well know. All you have to do is look at relations between the United States and Europe, and even relations in East Asia between the United States and South Korea and the United States and Japan. The United States, to some extent, acts like a rogue elephant these days. And if you're allied with the United States, it's very difficult sometimes to figure out how to move forward. And I think that given that President Trump is just in the early stages of a 4-year term, this is going to be a significant problem for India moving forward. I think it's natural, given the structure of the international situation today, for India to be allied with the United States. They don't have to be allied in a formal treaty, but there has to be, given the structure of the international system, there has to be a reasonably close relationship between India and the United States. And that's why we're in the situation we have today. But again, when you're dealing with the United States, let's be honest, you're dealing with a country that is something of a rogue elephant when it comes to diplomacy.
I do want to talk about, again, another aspect which has led to a degree of concern here in India, and that is, after India conducted the operation on the 7th of May, there was a bit of quiet for the next day, but on the 9th, particularly after the IMF sanctioned the latest bailout for Pakistan, it was on the night between the 9th and the 10th that the biggest military-to-military confrontation happened between India and Pakistan. It was almost like Pakistan was waiting for the IMF to make that announcement, and then it got like a green signal to go ahead and do what it did. And India, of course, responded. And the concern has always been here in India, not just with the US and these multilateral institutions, but why the West does not hold Pakistan to the standard that it holds all other countries when it comes to terrorism.
I think the West has a mixed record when it comes to terrorism. I mean, if you look at what's happening in Syria, the West, and here we're even talking about the United States, has developed reasonably close relations with a leader in Syria who was a former terrorist who headed a terrorist organization that specifically targeted Americans. And now the Americans are acting differently. So if you're expecting the West to have a consistent policy on how to deal with terrorism, I think you're going to be disappointed, because the United States and its allies vary in how they think about terrorism. And I think in this particular case, the fact that there was a terrorist attack that precipitated this whole crisis did not ultimately matter that much to the West. You can say that's wrong, but I do think that that's what happened. And then once the conflict began to spiral, once you began to move up the escalation ladder, the fact that it was a terrorist attack that initiated the conflict mattered for little, and all everybody cared about was shutting down the conflict. And this is what leads to the present concern in India that the West is not paying attention to the fact that terrorism is what precipitated the crisis.
But the utility of Pakistan, one could understand till 2021, 2022, when the United States eventually withdrew from Afghanistan. You needed Pakistan. In the 20-year war on terror, you needed Pakistan because there was military movements from Pakistan into Afghanistan. You needed strategic depth to control Afghanistan. But for the last 3 or 4 years, America in particular has not needed. The utility of Pakistan has come down quite substantially. And yet, when this flare-up happened, like you said, India and Pakistan got rehyphenated or got put back on the same plate. What is the utility that Pakistan brings to the table that the West does not want to call out its behavior, either on terror or look at what's happened just now? I mean, they've promoted a failed general to the rank of field marshal after a failed military operation.
Well, I've thought about this question, which is a very important question you're asking. I think that if you're the United States and you recognize that China is a peer competitor and you're interested in containing China, there's no question that India is of the greatest importance in South Asia, no question. But then you have to think about how you deal with countries like Myanmar and countries like Pakistan. And if you're the United States, what you want to do is go to great lengths to peel Pakistan away from China. You want to drive a wedge between Pakistan and China. You want to do everything you can to make sure there's not a tight relationship between those two countries. So I think what you see now and what you'll see over time is that the United States will certainly want to have good relations with India, despite the Trump administration's diplomatic blundering. India is our most important ally in South Asia. But I also think you're going to see the United States work hard over time to maintain good relations with Pakistan, again, to peel it away from China. And I think you'll see a similar situation with other countries like Myanmar.
But Professor, the interesting thing is I think the opposite also seems to be just as true, if not truer, which is that China is using Pakistan to keep India boxed in this sort of semi-war or this semi-boiling situation with these terror attacks and India's punitive reprisals, thereby stifling India's own position or India's ambition, certainly, to try and become a counterweight to China.
I agree 100%. I think it's in China's interest to make sure that the conflict between India and Pakistan remains in place. I don't think the Chinese want a war, and I would bet that the Chinese were interested in preventing a war in this recent crisis. But the Chinese want significant tensions between India and Pakistan so that the Indian military has to devote a lot of its resources and a lot of its strategic thinking to dealing with Pakistan, which gives China an advantage in the Himalayas and gives China an advantage in the Indian Ocean. So I think all of what is going on here with regard to China and Pakistan is not good for India.
One final word, just because we had this just earlier this week, this long 2.5-hour phone call between Presidents Trump and Putin. Where do you see that moving? Because everybody thought, President Putin would agree to a ceasefire, freeze the territories, no NATO membership for Ukraine. He was basically getting everything he wanted, but it doesn't seem like we're getting any closer to either a ceasefire or forget about a permanent end to this war.
The Russians have made it unequivocally clear from the beginning that there would be no ceasefire before there was an agreement on the final terms of a settlement. So what the Americans are doing here, and the Europeans, and even the Ukrainians, I don't understand at all. The Russians are not interested in a ceasefire. They're interested in coming up with a meaningful peace agreement. And there cannot be a meaningful peace agreement unless you agree to Russia's terms. The Russians are unequivocal on what has to be done to satisfy their demands. And we meaning the West, and especially the United States, don't seem to understand that the Russians are not going to make concessions on the important issues that they really care about. And therefore, Trump is just tilting at windmills. He's wasting his time. And this has become clear in recent days. But it's not going to improve. The situation is not going to improve. We're not going to come close to getting a settlement in Ukraine unless we accept Russian demands. And I do not believe we will do that. And the Europeans and the Ukrainians certainly will not do that. And the end result, in my opinion, is that this one is going to be settled on the battlefield. And there, I think the Russians are going to win. It's going to be an ugly victory, and you're going to get a frozen peace, and that will be the future of the Russia-Ukraine situation. But the idea that Donald Trump is going to settle this one is not a serious argument. He does not have the diplomatic skills at all and does not understand the problem. And furthermore, even if he did, he could not make the concessions to the Russians that the Russians are demanding.
All right, Professor John Mearsheimer, as always, a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us here on CNN News 18 and on Tacks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
All right, getting in breaking inputs from Tirumala. In fact, there was commotion over a namaz that was being offered in Tirumala as a Muslim man offered namaz near the Tirumala Kalyana Mandapam wearing a Hazrat cap. Vigilance officials are currently engaged in identifying who the person is and why did he offer the namaz there. A search is also underway for the person based on the car number and the CCTV footage that they have been able to access. Those visuals, in fact, coming in of that man offering namaz in Tirumala over there. PV Ramana brings us more inputs. Ramana, take us through what exactly ensued and have they been able to ascertain the identity of this man?
Still, the Vigilance Enforcement Department team, Vigilance Police is searching for that particular person who did the namaz in the premises of Tirumala temple. In fact, it is completely prohibited in Tirumala Hills because if the person who wanted to enter into the Tirumala Hills, there is a strict prohibition of other religion, even literature, dress, whatever the thing will be there, that will be removed outside of the at the entrance of the Tirumala Hills itself. There will be thorough check will be conducted and accordingly all this will be removed. But the person entered into the Tirumala Hills and it is the namaz wearing that Hazrat cap and all, it is creating sensation in Tirumala. The police is searching for him. That video was shot by some other and it is going on viral in the social media. Meanwhile, that person has given a complaint to the Vigilance Department with this particular video, and police is now they are doing the searching for that particular person based on his car number and all. And even as of now, there is no update on that. Still, they are searching for him because it's a very holy place, and there is the Tirumala is very holy place for Hindus. There is completely prohibition of other religion, whatever the things, whether it is literature, whether it is dress, whether it is cap, whatever it will be there, that will be removed. Even that vehicle enters into the Tirumala Hills also, if there is any stickers kind of a thing, that will be removed at the entrance itself. So one person entered into that temple and he is doing wearing the Hazrat and he is doing namaz. Is definitely one of the biggest sensational thing that definitely police will definitely it will be taken by the police very seriously by the police, and they are searching accordingly. Have to see what exactly will happen, and is he identified or not, will come to know very soon.
All right. Many thanks to you, Ramana, for bringing us all those latest inputs on that news story. It's led to quite a sensation. We await more inputs coming in from the authorities. With that, we're slipping into a quick break. Stay tuned to Nation at 5.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
All right, getting in breaking inputs from Tirumala. In fact, there was commotion over a namaz that was being offered in Tirumala as a Muslim man offered namaz near the Tirumala Kalyana Mandapam wearing a Hazrat cap. Vigilance officials are currently engaged in identifying who the person is and why did he offer the namaz there. A search is also underway for the person based on the car number and the CCTV footage that they have been able to access. Those visuals, in fact, coming in of that man offering namaz in Tirumala over there. PV Ramana brings us more inputs. Ramana, take us through what exactly ensued and have they been able to ascertain the identity of this man?
Still, the Vigilance Enforcement Department team, Vigilance Police is searching for that particular person who did the namaz in the premises of Tirumala temple. In fact, it is completely prohibited in Tirumala Hills because if the person who wanted to enter into the Tirumala Hills, there is a strict prohibition of other religion, even literature, dress, whatever the thing will be there, that will be removed outside of the at the entrance of the Tirumala Hills itself. There will be thorough check will be conducted and accordingly all this will be removed. But the person entered into the Tirumala Hills and it is the namaz wearing that Hazrat cap and all, it is creating sensation in Tirumala. The police is searching for him. That video was shot by some other and it is going on viral in the social media. Meanwhile, that person has given a complaint to the Vigilance Department with this particular video, and police is now they are doing the searching for that particular person based on his car car number and all. And even as of now, there is no update on that. Still, they are searching for him because it's a very holy place, and there is the Tirumala is very holy place for Hindus. There is completely prohibition of other religion, whatever the things, whether it is literature, whether it is dress, whether it is cap, whatever it will be there, that will be removed. Even that vehicle enters into the Tirumala is also, if there is any stickers kind of a thing, that will be removed at the entrance itself. So one person entered into the temple and he is wearing the hazrat and he is doing namaz is definitely one of the biggest sensational things that definitely police will definitely it will be taken by the police very seriously by the police.
Viewers, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has built his leadership persona on clarity, confidence, and a no-compromise approach.